those of you who are not haven't been here before, we do this every year for the Friends of the Teaneck Greenway through along the Hackensack River, and a great group. We encourage you to support them. On the west side of the river, we have a great endeavor here being run by the Bergen County Historical Society. I always like to point out, people hear Bergen County and they think we're an agency of the county government. We are not. We are a purely volunteer organization founded in 1902 to conserve the history of Bergen County. A lot of people think too, we tell you what color to paint your house, or think that we don't do that. We're a private, volunteer, non-governmental agency, and we've been engaged with preserving the Steuben House and the Revolutionary War battleground here since 1939. So just so you understand. You've never been to Newbridge before. You're standing at the site of the bridge that saved the nation. Of course, as you probably recognize, this bridge is not quite as old as George Washington's time. It is, however, the oldest highway swing bridge in the state of New Jersey. This bridge dates back to 1889. It is a hand-cranked pony truss swing bridge, meaning, if you can imagine this, on the high tides of the Hackensack River, you could bring 160-ton coastal sailing, ocean-going vessels of that era all the way up the river as far as Van Buskirk's Island, where the old waterworks company now is today. Proof that you could do this is lying in the mud, and because we're here at fairly low tide, you can actually see, if you look in the mud to the left foreground there, the mast of the Kate Lawrence. It's iron-bound. It looks just like a piece of rounded wood, not much left of it. Sitting on a little mud island over on the west bank of the river. See it over there? Kate Lawrence was a 150-ton schooner, and she was tied to the fenders of the bridge. Now, what are the fenders of the bridge? Because the tide is low, you can see the outline of the old pilings or posts that comprise the fenders of the bridge. You can see them on both sides. On the south side here, they're a little bit more intact than on the north side. The fenders of the bridge are just like the fenders on your car. When this bridge was hand-cranked open into the river, they surrounded the bridge and protected it from an accidental collision with the ship, because this bridge is very delicately balanced on a gear. And if you're standing in the right location and look down through the boards, you will actually see the gear wheel that the bridge rotates on. It's in the middle, I'm sorry. Yes, you can see it right below us here. What you have to imagine is when a schooner like the Kate Lawrence came up the Hackensack River or wanted to come down the river, these were what we used to call tin horn sailors. They would pull out a tin horn and toot it. Or sometimes they carried a conch shell that they would blow. And that would signal the bridge tender to come out and open the bridge. For most of the 19th century, the bridge tender was Fred Leggett, who lived in the general store on the east side of the bridge with his father. And when Fred heard the tin horn sound or the conch blow, he would walk out with what looked like, and this will date me in terms of my age, it used to look like a skate key. I don't even know if they exist anymore. A big sort of metal key that you would insert just like in a skate onto the bolt, and then he would literally walk around it. The arms of the key were at belly level, so he could walk around it, and the bridge opened to allow the ship to pass by. Up until 1889, this was a wooden drawbridge, that is, a bridge like on a castle, pulled up and down on ropes or chains. But in 1889, this was an experiment, as all experiments are in Bergen County, to speed up traffic. If you think of it, a drawbridge opens only one lane of traffic. So boats coming in one direction have to pass first, and boats coming in the opposite direction wait their turn. When you open a swing bridge, you're opening 2 lanes of traffic and everybody gets to move at the same time. Remember, water transport still remains one of the cheapest means of transport in the world. So even after the railroad, long after the railroad had come up the west side of the river, water traffic was still, a viable means of commercial travel. Go back to the Cape Lawrence for a minute. If you're an underwater archaeologist, I would hesitate to come down here in search of any treasures from the sunken Cape Lawrence. She burned to the waterline in 1868, and the newspaper account said that her hold was filled with empty potato sacks and stable manure. So if you're in need of either, dig in, but otherwise there's no sunken treasure here. As I mentioned before, the fenders of the bridge were intended to surround the bridge and protect it from an accidental collision with the ship. And this bridge was restored, repainted by the County of Bergen in 2001 or 2, I believe it was, and occupies the exact site of the bridge that saved the nation. What I also want to show you, I've even heard environmentalists discuss the Hackensack River, and it seems to me that very few of them actually know much about its ecology or its history. I'm surprised at this. I've heard a tale often told that the Hackensack River was only tidal to Moonachie, down at the head of the Meadowlands, until they built the Hackensack Reservoir. This is complete bunk. The river has been tidal for several thousand years to New Milford, to the Waterworks Company on New Milford Avenue. The reason we know that is along the shores of Teaneck, Pagoda, River Edge, and New Milford, in the 18th century, there were tidal mills powered by the coming and going of the tides rising and falling in the Hackensack River. More importantly than that, if you're familiar at all with the west side of the river, and you've ever seen on the hill above us here, Reservoir Avenue, that was the original reservoir of the Hackensack Water Company. There was a Revolutionary War earthworks, a fort, built on Bogart Road, up where the apartments stand. And in 1874, when the water company wanted to build their first water reservoir, they simply took the old Revolutionary War fort, lined it with brick, and turned it into a big tub or a reservoir to hold water. They pumped water up from just beyond this bridge to the top of the hill and fed it by gravity down into the city of Hackensack. Problem is, nobody drank the water or paid the water company. The water tasted fishy because this is still brack water. It's still tidal. So that's why, after several years of trying to sell their water, which they're still trying to do, I guess, they moved the original pumping station and reservoir up to the head of the tide so that they would then draw from fresh water. The other thing I want to point out to you, because it's a rather amazing story, and then I'll try to get you moving. If you look in the distance to the right and follow the ship landing, the old Newbridge landing, down to the very last board, you will see the outlet of Coles Brook, creek feeding into the Hackensack River. This brook comes from 2 principal sources. If you've ever been at Van Saun Park, the Van Saun Mill Brook is one of its arms. The other arm of the brook is a small stream forming the boundary between Hackensack and Maywood. The 2 streams join together almost under what's now Route 4. If you've ever driven on either side of Route 4, Hackensack or River Edge, and seen streets named Lakeview, but you don't see any lake, that's because that was the site of Zabrisky's Pond. But the dam is, well, it's fairly almost unnoticeable today. It's been lowered greatly in height. And if you go down behind, I get my eyeglasses at Eye Care there on Route 4. If you walk behind the parking lot, you can still see the form of the old lake bed that used to be filled there when the dam was higher. that was the site of Tunis Coal's grist mill. And so since that time, Coles Brook has been named for him. It continues down past the Newbridge Landing train station, behind the Steuben Arms apartments, and comes out into the Hackensack River here. One of the earliest tide mills was at this location. And if you come back even today and look, the tide is still going out. And if you come at the lowest point of the tide, right across the mouth of that bridge, of that creek, you will still see the old stone riprap base of a dam that was the mill dam here at Newbridge. And that dam was very unusual. It had a gate in the middle of it. This was a bear trap gate, meaning when the tide was filling the river and filling the outlet of Coles Brook, they would take the gate and lie it flat so that the tides rising would pass over top of it and fill the estuary of Coles Brook. The point of high tide, they took a pole and pushed the gate closed. So as the water level in the river fell, they trapped the tide in Coles Brook to create an artificial pond. Once the water level in the river fell far enough, they doled the water out to turn the water wheel of the Zabriskie grist mill. This mill was built as early as 1720, and it stood right on the south end of the river landing itself. One last thing I want to point out to you before we move on is the river landing. You can still see the boards of the old dock or wharf. If you can imagine, on high tide, the Steuben house is 65 feet long, and the schooners were about 67 feet long. So you're talking about boats nearly as long as the Steuben house coming up and docking here in front. If you notice, there appears to be, nearer the bridge, a section of the river landing that is missing. Most of the boards of the dock are upright. You'll notice there's a gap. That's because this is a gap where the boards form a V or cradle. This is a tidal river. If you sail a large ship up the river and the tide goes out, it's going to lay over on its side in the mud or the sand. So you don't want that to happen. So at high tide, they would actually sail the ship into this notch or cradle. The boards diagonally, just like my finger, sail the ship into that notch or cradle, and you tie the post to a mast post that looked almost exactly like a telephone pole in the old photographs. And that way, when the tide went out, your ship would essentially be resting in this notch or cradle and stay upright until the tide returned. Okay?